So Equifax is the gift that keeps on giving. For those of you that saw my live post an hour or two ago, for some reason Facebook decided not to keep it, so you've already seen this. Don't worry about it. For those of you that haven't, welcome. A whole lot's happened in the last week, so much so that I wanted to do a follow-up to my live post last week about the Equifax breach. Now, for that posting, we had over 2,400 views, and I am touched and humbled we were able to reach that many people about this important information. So if you Google Equifax, you'll find this as one of their logos. Equifax, powering the world with knowledge. I can't get it out. I can't get it out. In fact, they are. In fact, they are. Apparently, the whole world, cyber criminals and those alike, are getting knowledge about what Equifax has. Oh, gosh. Okay, it is what it is. What do we know new happened this week? We've got over 23 class action lawsuits have been filed. People that are in the legal area, and I am not a lawyer, nor have I played one on TV, are claiming the liability is up to $20 billion with a B dollars on what Equifax has done. Whether or not that's going to stick is interesting. They're talking about the disclosure notifications and if there's liability there. Well, those vary from state to state. 48 of the 50 states have things on the books that say they have to disclose as fast as possible, as is reasonable. The language varies, but some of the states do put a timeline on it. So, for example, Florida, 30 days. Connecticut, 90 days. New Mexico, Ohio, Rhode Island, Tennessee, Vermont, Washington, and Wisconsin, 45 days is the maximum time you have to notify. Well, it took Equifax 40. They spent 40 days before they let us know about this breach. But there is a caveat to all of those. If law enforcement says that it would interfere with an ongoing investigation, if the public's notified, then they don't have to. So it's going to be interesting to see where the real liability does and doesn't lay. That being said, I think Equifax is a company that has 11 point something billion in assets. And if there really is 20 billion in exposure, well, when your liabilities outweigh your assets, there's a word for that. It's called bankruptcy. It'll be interesting to see where the legal end of this goes. As of right now, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing where the specific laws that were broken are going to come from. We've got people that say we were harmed as a society, we were harmed as citizens because now these bad guys have our data. How do you prove that harm was done? And if harm was done, how do you prove it was this breach that caused it? As I said last week, 60% of us already had our data out on the dark web for cyber criminals to grab. Not only has this data from Equifax not been seen on the dark web, how do you prove that if your identity was stolen, it was this breach that caused it? Right now, the laws are woefully behind the cybersecurity times that we live in my opinion. What else has happened in the last week? Well, the CIO and the CSO, Chief Information Officer and Chief Security Officer, have both stepped down. They've retired, but we'll leave those semantics for other people to opine upon. David Webb was the CIO, is not any longer. Susan Malden was the CSO. And she's getting a whole lot of heat in the media right now because it turns out her degree was in music. Well, I want to hit the pause button on that for just a moment. Look, my degree is in chemistry, okay? When I decided to go into technology, I had to retool a little bit, and I got my CCNA and MCSE and A+ certifications back in, it's been a week or two. But more recently, I got my CISM certification, which is Certified Information Security Manager, because cybersecurity has been the focus of my career for many years and has had a big part of my career for over 15. I don't think it's reasonable to hold the fact I have a chemistry degree against me. And I don't think it's reasonable to hold against Susan that she had a music degree. That doesn't mean she was good or bad at her job. But what came out about their South American portal says something different. So on September 13th, it was found that there was a portal into Equifax's core systems for people in South America to work with those that have called Equifax to say, I disagree with something on my credit report. I want to dispute it. Well, the people in South America had a portal to look into people's credit information to see if the dispute was legitimate or not. It appears that they were sharing a username and a password. Now, that's not a good thing, But there have been instances in my career where I have not categorically said you cannot do that. There are times when the data isn't sensitive enough, the exposure isn't large enough to where you can live with this. Here we're talking about confidential data about people's credit. That's kind of hard to justify. Did I mention the username they were all sharing was a username of admin and a password of admin? I can't make this stuff up, guys. So from that standpoint, the music major thing may actually have been a problem. Who knows? That is incompetence in the highest order. There's nothing else to say. I don't know how else to put it. My 6-year-old could have hacked this part of Equifax's systems, literally. Now, ironically, in the book that I've written on cybersecurity entitled Secure Enough, 20 Questions for Business Owners and Executives on Cybersecurity, now available for pre-order on Amazon.com. Please go out and take a look. On page 78, I wrote, after an incident occurs, your company will be judged on the following criteria. Did your company take all actions to prevent the incident that one would expect of a prudent organization? Did your company respond to the incident using procedures that one would expect of a prudent organization? Are there any ways that the media can portray your actions around steps 1 and 2 to make your company appear to be culpable or incompetent? If true, expect that they will. It attracts more readers to their publication. I think that's part of what we have going on with some of the smaller pieces that I mentioned earlier. We also found out how it happened this week, and that's the big point of this. So what happened this week is a vulnerability was announced that was not put in by Equifax. The vulnerability is called Apache, I should say that. The framework that the vulnerability was in was called Apache Struts. And if you look close at this, let me get it a little bit closer to you. This is the vulnerability. The reason it's so critical is because it was seen being used in the wild. It wasn't a theoretical vulnerability. Second, it is so easy to exploit and so severe that its score on a rating of 1 to 10 is 10.0. They don't get any worse than this. And as of March, this problem was known. Now the framework, think of a framework to build a website kind of like a framework for a house. If you could have the walls and like the roof trusses, that's pretty common. You see them going down the highway on the backs of semis, these prefabricated roof trusses. Let's say you can have that framework pre-built. So all you have to do is to build your particular house around this pre-existing framework. It goes a lot faster. It's a lot easier to build your home. Well, that's how websites work also. And this Apache Struts is part of a framework. WordPress is another framework that you probably heard of. These frameworks can have vulnerabilities in the framework itself, in the fundamental aspects that the website was built on. And this is what happened in this case. Now, it wasn't a simple and easy 5-minute patch that Equifax didn't do. They had to upgrade this framework, and there may have had to be some massaging of the website to get it to still work. But this was a 10 out of 10 criticality that they didn't patch. So the bad guys got there and exploited it. That's a serious, serious problem. And I think that's going to show up in a lot of lawsuits. I think this is going to be a real big deal. So as Logan has seen, I'm wearing this t-shirt for a reason. Vulnerabilities in these areas are so severe that the analogy saying, well, what if you were in an armored car and the armored car had a plate welded onto it, and then there are other versions of the car that don't have that plate? Well, now the bad guys know where to fire at the ones that don't have the plate, fire at that spot in the hopes there's some sort of weakness there. No, these are far worse. And I wanted to wear this t-shirt to prove a point. This is from Star Wars, and this is the thermal exhaust port. The shield at the top is optional but recommended. Well, here's the problem. As soon as these new patches and fixes come out, the bad guys can reverse engineer what they fixed. And the systems that aren't fixed yet, if they know exactly how to fire at your Death Star, they can do anything they want. They can blow it up. They can steal your data. That's exactly what happened here. So the vulnerability that the entire movie Rogue One was based upon, that they had to steal, every time a critical patch comes out, the cyber criminals are being given the plans as to how to take down the system in question. It's critical to patch. It's critical that these shields be put on as soon as the fixes come out. And that's exactly what Equifax didn't do. And 143 million records later, here we are. So what do we do about it? It's critically important that we start working to get the laws changed to hold these companies accountable. They need to be held accountable for what it is that they protect, they maintain. They need to treat our data as if it was their data. And they're not. They're not doing it. And the laws are not strict enough to where it's in their financial best interest to do it. And that's what I want us to change. Putting a credit freeze on, it's a good idea, but we haven't seen this data in the wild yet. And taking those credit freezes off can take some time. And you might need credit for things that you didn't even realize. Going to get a new cell phone, they're probably going to pull a credit check. If you intend on buying the new iPhone 10, they will likely do a credit check. And if you have a credit freeze, you can't walk out the store with one. What we need to do is to change the law. We need to go to callmycongress.com. Type in your zip code. It will tell you who your congresspeople are. If there are multiple choices, type in your entire address. If typing in your address makes you uncomfortable, type in a neighbor's address. It doesn't matter. They will tell you who your congressmen and senators are. Tell them that we expect as citizens for these large companies to be held account for the safety and security of our personal data. And until it's in their financial best interest to do so, these things are going to keep happening. The laws need to change. To learn more about these topics and cybersecurity in general, the book goes live, is available for pre-order right now on Amazon. It will be officially launching October 1st. Secure Enough, 20 Questions on Cybersecurity for Business Owners and Executives. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. You have a great rest of your Sunday. Take care.